Hello. So, for the Learning for Global Citizenship course, we were asked to research children's rights in education. My group chose the negative impact of parents on their children in school. I have chosen to talk about abusive and neglectful parents. So, it has been proven that abused and neglected children are more likely to have poor educational outcomes. Maltreatment in the first 5 years of life almost threatens the probability that a child will have school problems, which is why abused children are more likely to have behavioral problems in the classroom and have poor skills social. They are therefore more likely to drop out of school before completing high school. Research shows that children with special educational needs are more than 7 times more likely to experience physical abuse and neglect. Lower academic achievement can have negative psychosocial and economic consequences throughout life. Neglect is the most common form of child abuse. In most common cases, family members and caregivers are the perpetrators of the abuse, so it has been recognized as the most harmful to the child's development. Research has shown that there are 3 main reasons why abused children suffer at school. So these include withdrawal, poor communication, and social skills and behavioral problems. In addition, they have difficulty building relationships with teachers, a necessary first step for a successful classroom experience. Many of these children have not been able to develop strong relationships with the adults in their lives. They have learned to be wary of adults, even those who seem reliable, because they have been ignored or betrayed by those on whom they depend. So children have difficulty managing strong emotions. Unfortunately, schools have very little patience with children who provoke and repel adults who try to help them, because for them this is one of the challenges to provide the support. But when children behave badly, schools often use disciplinary systems that involve removing attention and support rather than addressing problems. Then there is also another important factor that plays a role in education. It's a negative thinking. So in fact, they're always going to think that they want to hurt them. For example, if a teacher tells them, sit in your place, they hear it as sit in your place. So it's as if it were addressed to him or to her and not to the whole class. So they hear it as exaggerated, angry, and unfair. So they will be irritable very quickly. That's what Dr. Howard said. So another negative thought is also that they think they are bad in everything and that what they happen to them, it's their fault.
Another factor affecting the education of a child is the economic status of the families. High-income families invest more in their children's education. Children of families with high income take private lessons after school and attend various courses like math, science, playing an instrument. The children of families with low income do not have any additional help for their lessons except for school. Some students cannot even afford to buy additional resources other than school books. We cannot generalize that every child with a high income level is more successful than children with a lower income level. But we can say this: regardless of the success level of the children of families with a high income level, they are more advantageous in developing themselves, thanks to the additional opportunities provided by their families. On the other hand, low-income children need to make more efforts because they do not have any additional resources or help to improve themselves. In fact, some low-income families do not send their children to school after primary or compulsory education and send their children to work. Since the education of such children is interrupted, their future is already chosen. In other words, the children of poor families may experience difficulties in transitioning to the next level of education. Every class has a dynamism. Most classes usually have students from different income levels. If we look at these classes, not only in terms of educational opportunities, but also in terms of motivation, while the child of the high-income family can buy the branded clothes and food they want, the child of the poor family cannot have what they want. A child with a low income level will feel powerless and see him or herself psychologically defeated when he or she sees the expensive and branded clothes, school tools, and food of the child with a high income level. And this will also be reflected in his or her academic success. Since the families with low income are looking for a way to make a living, they do not spend much time with their children. Therefore, the child's social skills do not develop and they lack sufficient incentives for education. And the child cannot find enough motivation for school. In other words, the school readiness of children from low-income families less than other children. Poor children start school with a cognitive and behavioral disadvantage. In addition, since parents do not establish a teacher-parent relationship, they do not have information about the success of the child and do not make an attempt to support the child. The economic advantage or disadvantage of families directly affects the characteristic of educational environment they will create for their children. This situation makes education controversial in practice. Although education is accepted as a fundamental right in many countries, on the other hand, it transforms equality of opportunity in education from being a target to be reached to an unattainable reality. Every child is special and valuable, so various studies should be initiated and implemented to support children from low-income families.
Problems at home can be distracting to adolescents and can interfere with their performance at school. As seen in many studies that has been carried out, interparental conflict, being one of these problems, has a significant effect on long-term academic success. Findings from a 3-year longitudinal study of 387 school children, parents, and teachers living in the United Kingdom by Cardiff University suggest that the attributional processes engendered in children who live in households marked by high levels of interparental conflict and hostility have important implications for their long-term academic success. The research that followed up with 420 Chinese students, the Journal of Social Behavior and Personality, also came to the same conclusion as Cardiff University. The journal reported that there is an intimate link between parent-adolescent conflict and the psychosocial adjustment, particularly the positive mental health of Chinese adolescents. Also, Government of UK carried out important studies on this issue. According to them, frequent, intense, and poorly resolved conflict between parents can place children at risk of mental health issues and behavioral, social, and academic problems. It can also have a significant effect on a child's long-term outcomes. There is a strong body of evidence to show how damaging interparental conflict can harm children's outcomes, even when parents manage to sustain positive parent-child relationship. It can also put children at more risk of having problems with school and learning, negative peer relationships, physical health problems, smoking and substance misuse, mental health and well-being challenges. The risks can also have an effect on long-term life outcomes, such as poor future relationship chances, reduced academic attainment, lower employability, heightened interpersonal violence, depression, and anxiety. So, how can the effect of interparental conflicts on the child can be improved? Well, intervention programs can be one of the answers. Cardiff University claims that Intervention programs emphasize the importance of positive parenting with respect to facilitating improved academic success for children. More recent family and school-focused intervention programs recognize the importance of the interparental relationship both as an influence on the parent-child relationship and on children directly.
Previously, we talked about different things that could harm, violate children's rights. Now we're going to talk more precisely about parents' addiction to drugs, which has a terrible impact on children's education and development. First of all, children whose parents have addiction issues are more prone to physical disorders, such as asthma, migraine, stunted growth, physical defect, malformation of vital organs, etc. Then, they are more prone to psychological disorders, such as depression and anxiety. To follow, they might have self-esteem disorders, such as low esteem and feeling of worthlessness. And finally, they might develop a substance addiction themselves and reproduce the chaotic lifestyle they experienced as children, because indeed parents are always a model for children. Children mimic parents. Then, it also has psychosocial consequences. These children might engage in dysfunctional relationships. They might feel an intense loneliness and isolation because they are neglected by their parents. Then they might face depression and self-harm behaviors. They might have difficulty with authority, and this is because they didn't have any authority, they didn't face authority during their childhood, and also because not respecting the authority leads to some kind of attention, and this is what they seek most of the time. Then they might have trust issues, and they might feel disconnected from the world around them. They might isolate themselves as well. Finally, they might present a limited ability to show remorse or empathy. This context leads to educational problems as well. We can mention many absences, unexcused absences in childhood, which can turn into more serious truancy problems in teenage years and culminate in school dropout. Then, in school age years, parents are less available to provide assistance with homework, monitor school performance, and track assignments. To continue, the unstructured bedtimes and mealtimes, as well as witnessing domestic violence and safety issues, all contribute to an increase in learning problems and behavioral problems for these children at school. Indeed, it is difficult for children to focus on higher order thinking and learning when basic survival needs are not met. Finally, most of the time, communication between parents and teachers and the larger school system is very often poor. To conclude, parents' addiction has terrible impacts on the development of their children. It harms their physical, psychological, and emotional development. It violates their rights as children. It compromises their future. Their insertion in society will be very complicated both at a social and economic level, and there is a high probability that they engage in delinquent behaviors later on.
Child labor and its impact on child education. In Europe, children had for centuries worked with their families on the land and in the workshops before the 19th century, but their employment only became a matter of concern with the onset of the Industrial Revolution. At this point, young girls were heavily concentrated in the mills and small workshops of the textile industries, while boys were also to be found employed in mining, glassmaking, metalworking, and construction. Disturbing accounts of working conditions in the mills and underground in the coal mines provoked reformers in various parts of Europe to begin campaigning for legislation regulating child labor. The aim was to eliminate children from the workshops, reduce working hours, and ensure some elementary schooling. The movement towards compulsory education over the course of the century effectively reduced child work, and now the European Union has zero tolerance against child labor. However, child labor still remains a serious problem today, and governments must use the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the European Social Charter as guidance for preventive and remedial action. Many children working across Europe have extremely hazardous occupations in agriculture, construction, small factories, or even on the street. Child labor is most noticeable in the following countries: Albania, Bulgaria, Georgia, Moldova, Montenegro, Romania, Serbia, Turkey, Ukraine, Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and United Kingdom. A particular worrying aspect is that work interferes with children's schooling. Their results are soon affected and many eventually drop out of school. This only perpetuates the cycle of poverty. Choosing education over work for children is the only way for a country to develop. States should vigorously combat trafficking of children for work and exploitation. Child labor raises the question of what our societies will look like in the future when these children grow up, having missed the chance to play and to learn at school, but having been exposed to various health risks at an early age. We must act now for the future of these children, because these children are our common future. Dear listeners, we thank you very much for your attention, and we hope you learned something new. Thank you.